Isn't it this one? Let's try it one more time. I'm Patrick Lugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and art director for Kung Fu Magazine.
I'm Kurtis Fujita, comic book creator, also a Kung Fu instructor.
The Comics Fu Show, where we stand at the crossroads of comics, Kung Fu, and all kinds of crazy pop culture.
Okay, and we got it.
And we're back.
We are back. All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Comics Fu Show. I'm Kurtis Fujita, and this is Patrick Lugo.
Hi there. We just took a little bit of a break, or we can call that our mid-season break, but we've got a special doubleheader this week, which we're really excited about. So totally glad to be back for this occasion. It's a fun way to kind of bring us into the new season.
Absolutely. And we have a special, I would say a special guest, but also a special co-host today. And let me welcome to the stage Mr. Brian wuxiaman Chansy. Hello, Brian.
Hello there.
Welcome back. We need to work on some kind of drop for you for like the wuxiaman report or something like that. But
maybe I can start off with
yeah, there you
go. There you go.
Excellent.
Excellent. In addition to Brian, we have some very special guests today, all the way from Singapore. And Brian, maybe you can introduce them and kind of go over how you came into contact with them, and then we'll bring them onto the show. So
absolutely. So we have two guests from Cairo Comics from Singapore, Jing and also Apino. So I actually came across Cairo Comics on Instagram. I was looking through the Wuxia hashtags, and then Zhao Volume 1 appeared. And I thought, oh, okay, it's a upcoming Kickstarter. This is great. This is something new, something, obviously within the genre that I love, something that I can support. So I started following him, and I started sharing it with you, Kurtis. And I even shared it with Patrick, and Patrick was like, oh, I actually came across them a while ago. I was like, okay, perfect. That's great. And here we are now in the Comics Fu Show.
Excellent. Welcome to the show, fellas. How you doing?
All right. Very good. Very good.
Yep, I'm good too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We were talking before the show. It's a little bit late over there, so thank you so much for staying up to join us today.
It's all good, man. All good.
No worries. We don't sleep that early.
Fair enough. Well, good. Well, I guess before we kind of start going into it, maybe we can briefly you can introduce yourselves and just tell a little bit about yourselves, and then I think Patrick has an interesting story about how he came familiar with your work. But so let's start with Jing. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and how it fits into the whole wuxia comic book genre.
All right. Yep. So hi everyone. I'm Jing, and I'm a comic book artist or comic book creator from Singapore. I started drawing comics or self-publishing comics since 2019 with my first graphic novel, The World My Arena. So that is an action comic that was based on mainly from my influence of Jeet Kune Do, which I practiced for a few years. Then subsequently this year, I have worked with Api as well as Alan for my new graphic novel called Zhao Volume 1, which is a wuxia graphic novel. So why wuxia? Because wuxia has been basically a great part of my life, which we can talk about it more later after Api's introduction.
Okay, great. And Api, please feel free to let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Api Ngo. Also on YouTube, I'm known as That Chinese History Guy. So yes, I'm also a YouTuber, a writer. I write everything from commercial copies to, now comic books, apparently. So 10 plus years of writing, a couple of years on YouTube. So main passion is Chinese history. So I guess that's why I was roped in for this project. Yeah, that's about it in a nutshell.
Great. And Patrick, you mentioned earlier that you were familiar with the work even before the announcement of the actual crowdfunding campaign. Maybe you could share with everybody how all that came to be.
It's true. So for those of you who don't know, last year I was fortunate to receive the 2022 Make More Comics art grant for my project, The Tiger's Tail. And then at the very beginning of this year, they invited me to be on their board of jurors, right? And they have a really, without bogging everything down in the details, they have a really innovative method for like picking out their grantee, you know, like so that it's not just one person playing favorites. They have a whole like jury system. And so they invited me to be a part of it. And then around April, they sent me this huge box with about 14 submissions, you know, each one, making their comic submission for the 2023 Make More Comic grant. And the thing that really struck me, because it confirmed the theory that I've been nursing for a couple of years now. And my theory is that wuxia as a genre, especially in comics, is cyclical. And right now it's like cycling back up since about 2021. It's like, you know, you can look at like Marvel's Shang-Chi, which came out, which, you know, kind of was like the most recent pop culture version. You can think of like Avatar: The Last Airbender being another version of that genre, like popping into mainstream. And so what I noticed was, of those 14 submissions, you know, for the grant, two of them were wuxia comics. So I was just so excited to see them both and be like, this is confirmation that this genre that we all love is kind of still on the rise. And so that's where I first saw Zhao as black and white preview pages with the mission statement and everything. And I was, you know, however hard I was a proponent for that genre, right? It was just still so satisfying to know that it's there, it's bubbling up. So and then you also had listed that you'd be arriving on Kickstarter in the fall. So I just had that in the back of my head. So as is true to form, you know, I lost track a little bit, but you guys were right on point. And so when it showed up, it was just, I knew it was a matter of time before we'd all be speaking. So yeah, full circle. I'm so excited.
And
Yeah,
here we are.
I was really surprised to find out that Patrick was on the jury for the grant. Yeah, perhaps Api might not even know about it because back then the submission was, I think, early of the year. I haven't actually started working with Api. Yeah, so back then it was basically this for this art grant of, I think, to support self-publishers for comics, and I just did a quick compilation of whatever work I have so far, which was, I think, the first 2 or 3 chapters. So I think I compiled the first chapter and then I sent it in just to try my luck and hopefully I get something out of it. Yep. And then unfortunately I didn't win it, but I guess it was a good experience. Yep. Then subsequently I started to contact Api as well as Alan, our colorist, and then the Zhao that we saw from the Make More Comics grant submission is quite a drastic difference from what we see on the Kickstarter right now.
That's excellent. That's even more exciting. As I've told Kurtis, you know, art many times, right? Art changes along the way. So a lot of my projects have a tendency to change each time I move it, you know, a step forward. So that's even more exciting. Congratulations. And I'm just so glad that we're here. I have your submission somewhere in one of my piles over there, but I'll grab it in a moment.
Excellent. Well, before we start, I always, you know, this show's all about fandom. We're all about fandom. And sometimes it's really easy to kind of forget that there's normal people out there who like things that aren't as familiar. So I think it would be kind of a fun thing since we have so many people here. Maybe we'll have everybody comment really quickly on what wuxia is as a genre, what it means or what it means to you specifically, because a lot of people, it's still a term that people outside of the culture aren't fully aware of. So maybe we'll start with Api. Api, how would you define wuxia to somebody that isn't familiar with the genre?
Well, especially to an audience in the West, I most probably would say that imagine your MCU, imagine your DCEU, but with less superpowers and more grounded fighting styles, martial arts, and throw in a heavy dose of Confucian values and virtues, and you have this pot of this pot called the Jianghu, or the rivers and lake, which is what we call the world in Wuxia, so yeah, it's like something like that, a Eastern equivalent of a Western fantasy or superhero genre, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And KJ, what about you? How would you define it, or what would you say if somebody never heard of the genre? How would you explain it to them?
Perhaps to put it briefly, Wuxia would probably be a story that is set in a historical setting, but in a fictional way, whereby we can have fictional characters interacting with perhaps historical characters, and then there will be a lot of martial arts involved in the story. But so the martial arts is in a way the so-called the power set that is within the Wuxia genre. But what makes it so interesting or so unique as compared to, let's say, what we see in the MCU or Marvel DC kind of a superhero power is that each of the skill has multiple moves, and each of their multiple moves has its own unique names as well as meaning behind it. Whereas in perhaps superhero kind of comics, you get to see the power of flying or power of invisibility and so on. Those are cool, but I guess what separates Wuxia from all other kind of genre is that that unique power set as well, in a way.
Excellent. And we wouldn't have him on the show if he wasn't an expert in the field. So I think we should turn over to the wuxiaman himself. Brian, how would you explain it to the audience?
Not too different from what our guests Api and KJ mentioned. Though I also like to add the fact that wuxia also incorporates a lot of chivalry. And, there's the world of Jianghu Wulin, where there's a code of honor that you're expected to adhere to. So it's not just fights, because people say, oh, well, what's the difference between a Bruce Lee movie and, Kung Fu Cult Master that's based on Hemsworth and Dragon Saber? One of the main differences is that when you watch a movie like Kung Fu Cult Master, Jet Li's character, Zheng Wuqi, specifically talks about how he will do any favor for Princess Zhao Min as long as it doesn't go against heroism and chivalry. So it's not just fanatical martial arts, but also the code of chivalry that characters adhere to as well within the Wulin. And Api mentioned DC and Marvel. One thing I want to mention is, to me personally, amongst the modern wuxia novelists in the 20th century, I would say Jin Yong was kind of like Marvel, and Gulong is like DC. And I say this because Gulong's stories have a lot of mystery and detective work. Similar to DC, like, you see Batman acting like a detective. And you see Jin Yong, a lot of the characters, they go through, they start off from hardship, and then you see this journey as they, become better people, better fighters, which is similar to, like, Spider-Man, for example. You see him as an awkward teenager and he becomes Spider-Man. He goes through this journey where, with great powers comes great responsibility. Whereas with Gulong, sometimes when you read the novel, especially, sometimes they're already powerful. They're already adept in their martial arts. So sometimes you don't see that journey, even though they adhere to other tropes of wuxia, but you don't see that heroic journey as you do in Jin Yong. So I just want to throw it out there.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Gulong versus Louis Cha or Jin Yong thing is like a long-running thing for more than half a century, and I'm really glad you brought it up, because not many people outside of the community actually understands this relationship as well as you put it out there, just now. Yeah, so that's really like cool, man.
That's excellent. Patrick, what about yourself? How would you explain it to somebody, a lay person?
Oh, well, okay, so that's my job, right, is to explain such things to the lay people, right? So, so I kind of just really distill it down to like Kung Fu fantasy, right? It's like all of those ideas that people absorb through like watching black belt theater in the US, or, like I mentioned earlier, Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it's just like those ideas and those half-remembered aspects of those martial arts movie all combined into like, one area that's somewhat historic, right? Like a quick, in San Francisco, the movie that was really popular was Hero, Jet Li's Hero, which was such a nice textbook example of like, accessible wuxia, not just in terms of excellent fight choreography, but the way the story kind of played itself out, right? Like even the bad guys weren't so bad, right? Donnie Yen and Jet Li versus each other, right? But who do you root for in that fight? So I think there's that aspect to wuxia where it's just like, there's definitely like a morality, but it's not just a simple catch the bad guy, right? So much of it has to do with that, like achieving that next level as a personal growth phenomenon. So, I mean, that's something that really, I think I have to, because that's the kung fu of it all, right? It's not just fighting, right? It's the cultivation of skills. So the second sentence I usually go after the kung fu fantasy thing is that, you can have good kung fu in cooking, you can have good kung fu in tea, and, so just to expand that out a little bit. But while I have the attention, there's one thing that KJ brought up about your definition of wuxia, which had to do with the fighting techniques and the titles surrounded by that. Now, I'm setting up Kurtis because I want to talk about Chuanpu, right? The martial poetry and how that's used as part of a real tradition in terms of how the martial arts are taught. So I think Kurtis, this could be an Ask the Kung Fu Master sequence flipped into things. So
I think with that, and also the whole idea of what wuxia is, coming from a kung fu background, as some of a fair amount of us here have. I used to ask my sifu, he would have on his wall, he'd have posters, of all the different events and all the different sifus in the area. And I would always as a kid, I'd ask him, well, does this person have good kung fu? Or does that person have kung fu? And he was always diplomatic, but he would always say, well, he can fight really well. And then they'd say, well, does he have good kung fu? And he would kind of not answer. So, well, what about this person? Oh, he performs really well, Does he have good kung fu? What about this person? Oh, well, he's a good person, but does he have good kung fu? It was only the rare exception where somebody had all three, where they were a good fighter, where they had the art down, but also they'd cultivated the personality. Would he actually take the time to say, that person has good kung fu? And I kind of feel like that's something that you see time and time again in the wuxia genre, is that cultivation of all those aspects. Because, of course, without the morality, it's just a bunch of thugs, basically, right? So, but as far as the martial poetry, yes, that is an important part. And a lot of it alludes to the actual application. Like, for instance, in Hongga, we have a move called the hungry crane searches for the shrimp. And I always wondered, what is this move for? Like, what is it? And when you look at it and you're doing the movements, you realize that it's the sequence where you're attacking at a low angle. You kick low, it's a groin kick, and then you counter by grabbing the person's hand as they try and grab your kick, and you hit them in the groin. It's a series of attacks, a relentless attack to the groin. Hence, the hungry crane searches for the shrimp, right? So sometimes there's a playful, but to bring it back to, I guess I noticed that in your book, and I saw some of the sample pages on Kickstarter, which looked amazing. I noticed you definitely have that poetry with the movements, right? Was that something that right from the beginning when you started working on it, KJ, you were like, this has to be in here, or was it something as you're working on it? Okay, I think I want to bring this in. Or was it always part of the DNA for the whole?
To have the names of all the different moves, all the different skills. That was part of the plan all along, but the exact names that we eventually decided on, it went through several iterations. Before we arrived with something that we are happy with. Yeah, so I basically started off doing a draft, and then RP actually enhanced it and then made it what it looks like today. Yeah, and then what I did is we then incorporated into the art itself, and we tried to blend in with the art, and then we also tried to think of like not just the names, not just very unique, nice names, but how does it blend with the story? How does the moves actually work in a way?
That's great. And how did the two of you become acquainted with each other? Did you know each other before this project started, or was it something that came up during? Or how did this collaboration come together?
Interestingly, even though Api and I stay in Singapore, which is a rather small country, we have not met each other in person yet. Yep. So all this collaboration has so far been via so-called video calls, emails, messages, and so on. Yeah, but we, in a way, our working style blends quite well, complements each other quite well. So, so basically, I think we have to go back all the way back to when I submitted for the Make More Comics art grant. So basically, while I was compiling it and then submitting for the art grant, I noticed that there are certain gaps that I feel like I would need some help with, in particular, for example, the dialogues, to bring out the characterization of the characters in a better way. Perhaps the accuracy of the history, the accuracy of the dynasty that I'm working in. Yep. So I guess that led me to finding Api, who is basically known as that Chinese history guy on YouTube. So I mean, he's the best guy to work with on this project. I needed someone who's good with Chinese history. I needed someone who's good with Wuxia. I needed someone who's good with English. I need someone who's interested in comics, and I think he fits the bill. So I spent weeks after weeks of listening to his videos, okay, trying to see how much does he know actually. And I also went to read his blog, and I actually found a translated article of him. He did a translated article of Jing writing about Wuxia. I think it was that. Yeah, I was very impressed. I'm like, okay, this is the guy. So I actually reached out to him, and that's how we started working.
That's great. And Api, had being involved in comics ever been something that you considered, or this is something that kind of was like a pleasant surprise that somebody wanted to work with you on that?
It is something totally out of the left field for me. I mean, I've been writing for, like, seriously writing and making a living out of it for more than 10 years. Never had anything published with my name on it. So the real irony of it all is that, I've never thought that I'll ever work on a comic. And the irony of it all is that, the first thing that's going to be published with my name on it is actually going to be in a comic, which I have not in my wildest imagination would I have thought that, one day I'll be writing a comic, It's just so out there, It's not something you think about as a Singaporean. It's just not done. You know what I mean? So a couple of months, earlier this year, or was it end of last year, when the message came on Facebook from this guy called Kang Jing. I say, oh, hi, I'm a comic artist, and I was wondering if you'd like to collab. I was like, who the hell is this, man? So I went to look up, Karo Comics. So this is who he is. This is what he did. Looks interesting. And I was kind of like on a bit of a burnout from my YouTube channel and writing scripts and everything. I was like, this might be a good, change of pace and change of direction for me. And so I was like, yeah, why not? What's the worst that could happen? And yeah, here we are. Kickstarter
lucky you
funded.
didn't think that was a scam message and deleted my message. Thankfully.
Well, I like both of you are fond of research, apparently, not just in the history, but background checks, right? You background checked each other to make sure it was legitimate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the most important is to find that to ensure that each of us is a good fit with each other, because it's going to be a long project. I mean, this volume 1 itself is about 200 pages, so it's going to be a long commitment, and yeah, there's going to be more volume. So I'm glad we are able to work with each other well.
That's great. Yeah, I noticed the page count is pretty sizable. So maybe both of you could tell everybody about the book and the campaign. The campaign's live now, and at the airing of this, it'll be available for about, I think we're saying maybe 4.5 days or so. So make sure to check it out, and we'll have the links and everything as well. But maybe both of you could tell us about the book and what it's about.
Right. So Zhao is basically a story that is set in the tail end of the Song Dynasty and then leading up to the Yuan Dynasty. So it basically follows this Zhao family, who is basically the last family of the so-called the Song Dynasty royalties. And then upon the fall of the dynasty, then we move into the Yuan Dynasty, whereby China is now being so-called governed by the Mongolians. And we And here we have the Zhao family, who was once the rulers of the Song dynasty. They are now just so-called peasant within the Yuan dynasty, and how these dynamics play out between the Mongolians with the Zhao family as they get so-called thrown back into the politics of the Yuan dynasty. So in a nutshell, that's basically that. Perhaps Api, you want to add on?
You basically got the story there. That's what it is. I'm just here to make the words look good, make the text flow, make the dialogue sound good.
He plays a huge role, in fact, because to be honest, when I look at my first draft as compared to how much he has edited and how much he has actually value added to the whole story, I think it's a drastic difference. Yeah, and I'm very thankful for that, because now I feel like I have something that I'm proud to actually put out, and I'm not ashamed to actually show it. Because he just adds so much to the story with all the words.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, I think what's interesting is that, especially as American or Westerners, and I think I saw this on another show that you both were on recently, but one of the things I think people don't understand or is that when we talk about the dynasties, how different each of the dynasties is, and the different ethnic groups in China. I think, a lot of Westerners think Chinese is just one blanket, ethnicity, one blanket culture, and have no idea about the dynamics or the historical dynamics. Is there a reason why you felt that you wanted to choose this specific dynasty, this specific place and time to tell the story that attracted you to doing it? Or how did the decision making work in that?
I think for me to choose this dynasty, it comes from so-called a personal influence. Yeah. So Zhao the title Zhao is basically the English pronunciation for the surname Zhao. So it's also basically my surname, which is Zhao. So why I decided this is basically from so-called personal influence in a way. So I've always been influenced by wuxia stories. I have been exposed to wuxia novels, wuxia stories since young, be it I think TVB adaptations of wuxia, be it the novels itself, and so on. So I have always grown up liking wuxia. So I have always wanted to create a wuxia story of my own. But where do I exactly start? Because like I mentioned, Chinese history is so wide. There's a lot of different dynasty, and where do I start? So then I actually look back onto myself. I have this surname Zhao, and I have always been told that Zhao was actually the family name for the Song dynasty royalties in a way. Yeah. So technically, I could have started the story anywhere in the Song dynasty, I suppose. But because if you watch, let's say TVB adaptations of wuxia stories or even wuxia novels, many of the stories are actually set in the Song dynasty. Yeah. So it's actually quite saturated in a way, or perhaps I'm not that confident that I could do something that is so-called different from the rest of the wuxia within that dynasty. So if I don't do it within the dynasty, perhaps I could do it at the start of the dynasty, or I could do it at the end of the dynasty. And so therefore I decided that perhaps at the end of the dynasty is fun, because it actually leads us to the next dynasty, which is the Yuan dynasty, something that is very unique in a way. Because in the Yuan dynasty, basically the Mongolians rule China. And I thought that would set up a very, very interesting dynamics as well. Yeah. And yeah, I guess that's how I actually decided on the dynasty itself, and this era perhaps. And of course, Yuan dynasty is something that wasn't really explored as much as compared to the other dynasty. In fact, I can't really find any perhaps adaptations or even novels on this Yuan dynasty, which also makes researching very difficult. So I had to bring in that Chinese history guy, Api, to help out. He actually pointed out some of the inaccuracies that I made in my art and so on, which I managed to correct it before we actually publish it. Yeah, so, and of course in the Yuan dynasty we can have very interesting historical characters like Kublai Khan, like Marco Polo. Yeah, so having fictional characters interacting with historical characters, that will also make it very interesting, I guess.
That's great. Yeah, that's a big part of the genre. And Brian, you're so familiar. Maybe you could cite some examples about within the genre. I know, of course, Condor Hero's the first one in the village, right? There's definitely some historical characters showing up throughout this. Maybe you could comment on that.
So for me, the closest that I could think of that deals with the end of a dynasty and the beginning of one, not exactly the beginning, but at least kind of the beginning, is Jin Yong's Sword Stained Royal Blood. Wuxia.
Actually, there's one more. The Heavenly Sword and Dragon Saber is the end of the year. Yeah.
So those two come to mind, but especially Wuxia because it's literally right like the last few years. And also what's interesting about that story, which by the way was adapted into one Shaw Brothers movie, Sword Stained the Royal Blood, 1981, and a 1993 movie with Danny Lee and Yun Bill, same title. And also there was one two TVB series and one mainland Chinese series. What's interesting about that one is that it doesn't just show the fall of the Ming Dynasty, it also shows the short-lived Shun Dynasty. It was in between the Ming and the Jing. Because
Chuang Wang's era.
That's right. That's right. Because a lot of people think it went from Ming to Qing like that. I was like, no, there's actually a very short-lived dynasty that, because it was so short-lived, people kind of just forget it.
And people also forget that there's actually a Southern Ming dynasty, which is not like common knowledge as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So one of the things that caught my attention about Zhao was, I thought of those, aforementioned titles immediately, but I thought, oh, this is so cool because I don't see too much of very final years of the Southern Song Dynasty straight into the Yuan Dynasty. Usually it's beginning of Yuan Dynasty in some movies or kind of near towards the end of Southern Song. Like Return the Condor here, it's kind of towards the end, but it's not the very final years. Fortunately or unfortunately for fans, you don't see Guo Jing dying while he defends the Southern Song Dynasty. But yeah, that was my take. There are those two titles definitely come to mind within the wuxia genre.
Right.
That's great. Patrick, did you have any questions to add about?
I mean, I'm just really thrilled to be seeing these like deep dives into not just the wuxia but the history and how they interconnect. So, I mean, I think the best thing I could say is just keep going, more please. That's exactly why we built this channel, right? Was specifically to look at these things and to have these conversations. So
definitely.
But okay, so let me just throw out a much more generic question, right? Like we all love comics, right? And what does Captain America's shield, Thor's hammer, and Batman's batarang have in common, right? Is that the iconic weapon that's associated with the hero. So I mentioned that because the spear, right? The spear has such a huge historic significance, right? Isn't it called like the grandfather of weapons or something like that in kung fu circles? So to create a comic book and to create a comic book hero whose like signature weapon is a spear, I think is such a bold move. Where else in mainstream culture do you see that? Like, what's the closest thing that we get to something like that? So I wonder if I'd love all of your feedback on that particular thing, on that particular choice, and what that says about the character and the comic in general.
I mean, before Kang Jing give his answer, I would like to point out that actually spear is actually quite a common weapon in when we're talking about our Chinese heroes, a lot of them were generals back in the day, so a lot of their main weapons were spears. Like if you read the Three Kingdoms, Zhao Yun would be a spear wielder. I mean, if we talk about Lü Bu, not really a hero, but the Sky Piercer is a pole arm, which is basically spear-like. Northern Song Dynasty, the young generals, all spear wielders. Then we have Yue Fei and his line, all spear wielders as well. So it's not as uncommon in the East as maybe in the West to see spears as a main weapon for our heroes. So maybe because we've seen so many of them, growing up, these are all the stories we grew up with. So maybe having a spear is to us, it's not like so out there. Of course, we have our swords, we have our Tao, which is like the single-edged swords, and all these other weapons. But the spear, the staff, and the sword, these are really weapons that you see very commonly in a lot of Chinese wuxia fiction or kung fu fiction or stories of that vein. Yeah, so not that out of the left field, but yeah, I can understand where that question came from.
Yeah, I think Api basically, yeah, he's spot on in terms of the influence and the decision behind why we chose spear for the story. Yeah, because in the basically Chinese culture, the popular characters or the famous historical characters or even novel characters, they are usually generals that will spear. So like people like he mentioned about the young generals, the Zhao Yun, who is also by not by chance but is another Zhao as well. Yeah, so that is actually an influence in terms of why I chose the spear as the weapon. But besides that, we make it into a so-called a family move that is just specific towards the Zhao family. So we call it the Zhao Dragon Spear, whereby this set of skills is just so-called passed down over the generations within the Zhao family. Yeah. So that also helps to put in some dynamics within the story, whereas like, for example, that there could be pressure within the family that they have to actually master the spear. They are actually basically the entire generation of the Zhao Dragon Spear is actually passed on to them. So that there's that kind of dynamics in play as well that we can work around with.
That's great. Yeah, the spear, and for those that are aware, like they're giving the cultural context. The Chinese spear that's used in Kung Fu is extremely exquisite. It's not what most people think of it just being like a solely infantry kind of thing. You can change the range to a short range. There's a ton of moves. I recall when I was first learning the spear, and one of the key mark points is that you slide it like a pool cue so that you can actually extend it. And that's part of that rolling back and forth and sliding is a huge dynamic of it. But I always recall when I was learning it, I didn't grasp that. And I was one of the few non-Chinese students in the Chinatown school. And so I was just moving it like this instead of like exquisitely. And I'll never forget my Si Hing, my Kung Fu brother, yelled at me. And he goes, "God damn it, Kurtis." He goes, "This is Chinese Kung Fu." He says, "You're moving that spear like a damn savage," because I was like a native, just there was no. So it's an amazing weapon. It's extremely versatile. And so, yeah, there's a lot to it,
Cool.
Yeah, Brian, please.
I want to mention one thing that's very interesting. When I first came across Kang Jing, I watched some of your other YouTube live streams, and you mentioned your name came from Yang Kang Guo Jing from Legend of the Condor Heroes.
Yep, that's right.
And I thought it was interesting now that we're talking about spears, because Yang Kang, his father, Yang Tiaxin in Legend of the Condor Heroes, was a spear master.
And he's supposed to be a descendant from the Yang family's general from the Northern Song Dynasty. Yeah.
That's right. So I just want to throw that out there, the connection with your name, Kang Jing and spears, and the greater wuxia world literature.
He's born for wuxia, He's born. It's destined. It's destined.
We're all kindred spirits.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, the campaign looks like it's doing great, and I do see that the rewards are, there's digital and physical. And how many pages is it that we're seeing? The page count is quite substantial, isn't it?
Yep. So it will be a 200 pages graphic novel. So it's basically broken down into 7 chapters for volume 1, 7 chapters, as well as a bonus section. So in the bonus section, there will be an article by RP on basically a deeper dive into the Battle of Yamen. There will also be basically some other artworks done by other Singaporean artists, basically their rendition of Zhao Ming. Yeah, so those are part of the bonus content. Within the 7 chapters, we basically explore the initial stages of the story and how actually the transition from the Southern Song Dynasty to the Yuan dynasty and what happens to this Zhao family within the volume 1.
That's great. And how depending on a Kickstarter book, it's either partially completed, fully completed, yet to be started. Where are you at in terms of production of the book at this point?
At this point, I would say we are at 99.9%. That 0.1% is basically because we have this reward tier, which is the Hall of Fame. So as long as you back the comic, your name will appear within the Hall of Fame of in the book itself. So that will be that final piece to complete the book. In other words, once the campaign ends, within a few days, we will be able to send the book for printing.
Wow, that's great. That's massive. And for people that are out there looking, sometimes that's a big question. Even when I had my campaign, people were asking, well, how far along is it? You hear horror stories sometimes. I was talking to a friend last night where they backed the book and it's been 4 years and it still hasn't been fulfilled yet. So the fact that you're that far along for such a huge book is massive. So I backed it last night. I think everybody should definitely check it out and back it. I mean, it's so far along. Oh, definitely. And here's what we were talking about, the poetic names of the move. The dragon seizes the tiger, which I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
that's a good panel. That's a good panel.
I was planning to back it live, but I don't want to mess up our stream by trying to press any more buttons. So the fact that we've got some of this beautiful artwork on the screen is just such an inspiration. One other thing I wanted to just note, one of the other reasons why I brought up the iconic use of spear is because in 2020, the last print issue of Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine, which I art directed, featured the spear on the cover. And so it's just got a special place in my heart to know that it's still, it's still out there. It's making its way into the wider consciousness. And, that's just, it's that pop culture aspect of the Comics Fu show that we always got to touch on.
Definitely. And I just want to point out in the image, I mean, there's so much going on there from first glance that talks about not only the sincerity, but the authenticity. So the fact that the spear is bending that way, even though it's exaggerated, that is an important thing. The spears aren't rigid. They have the wood that's chosen on things. They do have a give to them that allows them to almost have a certain elasticity. So the fact that that's there, the horsehair at the front of the spear, all these things are so important and show that it has that authentic air to it. So I think that's great. Just great stuff. And was this done digitally or was it done on physical media? Or how did you produce this?
So all the artwork, the penciling and the inking are done traditionally on 11 by 17 inch pages. So perhaps let me just grab a piece. Yep. So this is the original of the cover page.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So I do it on 11 by 17, basically the standard American size. Yep. And then afterwards, I will scan it in and then we get it colored digitally by our colorist, Ellen. And then following which, I will do the lettering as well digitally. Yep. So that gives room for any changes in terms of the lettering and so on.
That's great. I love the composition on that piece. Excellent work. Very cool.
I think that's the cover. That's the original cover that he did. Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, Patrick's gonna go grab a couple items. But yeah, let's look at this a little bit more. Yeah, it looks great. What has the response been online? Has it been a lot of your local Singaporean, community, or is it everybody from all over? Have you been able to notice who's
I think so far for the Kickstarter campaign, it's about perhaps 60% local and then 40% from international, which is very surprising as well. I mean, it's a good sign because we are getting Wuxia out of just the local context, and then basically people from different cultures are interested in Wuxia, which is very heartening to see.
That's excellent. Patrick, did you grab something or were you just stepping away? I didn't know if you had something you wanted to show.
I was looking for the proposal for that
Oh.
that you had sent me, KJ, but I think I just recently put it away in my cabinets back there, and alas, I won't be able to show off the fact. Well, I did do it online, but I've got those beautiful black and white pages of your art, which are great to see, and I just if I was a little bit more prepared, I would have pulled him out of one of those cabinets back there, but I'll spare us all the chaos, the bowling ball that'll fall down or something.
So one question I was curious about, just it's a general thing, right? All of us are fans of the genre, but popularity of genres come and go, and I can say that not just somebody that likes Wuxia, but even just who teaches Kung Fu, and Kung Fu as a martial art, its popularity, to be frank, has waned in recent times. What is it like in Singapore? Or is the younger generation or the generation coming up as interested in the genre, or is it something that is where does it fit within the whole pop culture over there?
Actually, it's kind of interesting just now when you guys mentioned that Wuxia is actually on the rise in the cycle in the West. Actually, in the East, where we are, what we're experiencing is actually a downturn of the popularity. Even China, mainland China, their production houses are not making adaptations of Jing stories anymore, which is surprising because practically for the past 20, 30 years, almost every 2 years you get a new adaptation. But now it's like we don't have an adaptation of any Jing stories since, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. So it is definitely on the downward trend here in terms of popularity. The youngsters, I guess, like youngsters everywhere, they are more interested in their mobile games and their whatever the trend is now than really diving deep into this genre of fiction or this new world. It takes a lot of time and effort to really dive in like you would any topic. So, and nowadays there are so many distractions. So that's why we are pretty glad and surprised that the Kickstarter project actually got so much support from the community, because I believe KJ was telling me that this is one of the bigger campaigns that you set up on Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's actually the largest already. So the amount that we have raised is the highest ever, and then the number of backers, it has already matched the highest that I have ever. Yep. So whoever is the 38th backer would be the record-breaking backer.
I think Patrick said it's going to be him. So.
Right. Yeah. So it's surprising, and we are really humble and honored that we have this support from the community. This is something that is quite surprising. Yeah. So yay, Wuxia's on the back. Maybe we'll be the ones that bring it back here in Singapore.
Maybe we'll be the Jing for the new generation.
There you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so bold as to assume that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Brian and I talk because Brian works with me at Fifth Ring Studios for the Shadow Ghost comic, and I'm a bit older than Brian, but one thing Brian was saying, if you don't mind me mentioning, was even when you were growing up and you were getting interested in the genre, a lot of your classmates and people of your generation were kind of already past that and felt that it was kind of a little bit outdated. Maybe you could comment on that and how that affected your fandom.
Absolutely. So just to give context, I'm 32 years old, born in 1990. So as I mentioned before, my aunt owned a video rental store. So I grew up watching lots of Hong Kong, Taiwanese, even Singaporean programs. And I went to a rather diverse high school. There were people, whether they were Chinese American, Vietnamese Americans, and such. A lot of Chinese Americans I knew, especially the girls, thought that a lot of Chinese language programming was kind of outdated. Now, this is like 2005, 2009. So this is before mainland China started making the Xianxia dramas where you have elaborate sets and special effects. But they were into Korean dramas, which I enjoy Korean programming too. In fact, I especially enjoy the Korean wuxia known as muhyop. But anyways, when I was in high school, a lot of them were like, oh no, I don't watch that. That's like my parents' generation, or oh that TVB stuff that's old. It's all with the oppa in my Korean drama. And this is like at least 7 years before Gangnam Style became popular on YouTube. But already in the Asian American community, a lot of the people of my age, they were more gearing towards the Korean dramas. Some of them were watching a little bit of the Taiwanese idol dramas. But this is the time when F4 was starting to go down in popularity. So they moved on from F4 to the K dramas like Super Junior and such.
Your BTS, your Girls' Generation.
Right. Girls' Generation was my generation. Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty similar. I mean, the trend, I guess you guys, maybe the wave moved towards the West, like maybe like 5-10 years from here. So it was like, first we had the TV, we were all watching TVB in the 80s, and then you have the Japanese wave came in the 90s, and then you have the Hallyu or the Korean wave, and then in between all these you have all the Taiwanese variety shows that's like peppered all throughout, and then after that you have the mainland China production started coming on in the 2000s, and which is pretty much what you reflected there, on the trends of what the people were watching and what they were into, throughout over time. Yeah.
And I want to mention about the mainland China. Some people I know who they say, oh, but I saw this wuxia TV drama on Netflix. I was like, okay, what's the title? Because I have a feeling I know where this is going. They said, oh, The Untamed. I said, oh, it's a Xiansha TV series based on one of those Danmei novels. I forgot the full title in Chinese already, but I told them, oh, that's to a lot of wuxia fans, that is not
offensive.
That's Xiansha. No, Xiansha did originally start from wuxia. Technically it started off with that, and then it branched off into its own. But I was like, ooh, you're gonna have a very interesting debate or conversation with some diehard wuxia fans if you associate those. And those TV dramas, one of the things that are popular about it, going to what you said, Api, was that it has elements of gaming because they level up, they cultivate and have all these different levels. Now in wuxia, you do see levels sometimes, but it's not on the same scale as a MMO RPG where you your skill and such. So these Xiansha, I think, it really started kind of like as a subgenre wuxia, then became its thing. But they are definitely going to the aspects of gaming, like you mentioned.
There are some good Xianxia out there. I mean, recently I've been reading this web novel, this Xianxia web novel, and personally, I feel that, this is like the best damn Xianxia I've ever read in my life, man. I just sit there going through like 10 over 1,000 pages like that, There are good ones, but majority of them, I would say 99.9% of all the Xianxia web novels or the TV, those that got adapted were already considered pretty good, pretty decent. There are even more that never got adaptations, and you go like 3 pages in, you go like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, seriously, Api, what were you thinking? But I guess it's also a good thing. It might, be like the gateway fiction, the gateway genre for more people to come into wuxia. Like, I got into history through wuxia. Wuxia is like my gateway to history. So maybe today or maybe someday in the future, xianxia will become a gateway for wuxia. And maybe comics will be a new medium for wuxia, like what we are doing here. And props to KJ for doing this, man, when nobody is doing it now.
Definitely, and yeah, I come in, Bucky. It's one thing, people jump on the bandwagon when something's on the uptick, but it's different to do it when I think all of us are doing this purely out of passion, And one of the key points that Api brought up about wuxia that I think is so exciting about wuxia and the whole kung fu genre is, whether it's exaggerated or not, it's this close to reality. In other words, there's no radioactive spider that bites them and they get sparks. All these things are, this actually was happening at this place in time. Here were these historical characters. It's based on these real techniques. I'll never be able to do, float on top of a tree branch, as much as I'd like to, but I might be able to jump a little higher, right? So there's that thing, and so I think that's why the genre is so inspiring, because you can really see that it's this close to reality, even if it's exaggerated.
Wait, so you're telling me that just like Jing, I can shoot the 18 dragon palms as long as you told me that I can just do that and imagine 18 dragon palms come out.
Well, see, that's why I would recommend, if you're going to watch Heaven Star Dragon Saber, to watch the one I did, which is the TVB with Tony Leung Chu Wai from the 80s, because you won't be deceived that it's fake, because the production value is very low, and when they're on the mountain, you can hear the delivery truck outside the studio backing up. But the acting is so good and the story's so good, you don't care. It becomes almost like watching a play. But
the fights are good.
Yeah. The fights are great. And when you do see him get the secret scroll from the monkey, it is a guy in a gorilla suit. So it's.
Yeah, you should have seen the condor in the Condor Heroes. It's a guy in an eagle suit that's like this huge and like walking around and squawking, quack, they didn't even get sound effects. It's just a guy squawking through a microphone. It was like, oh my god! But we enjoyed it, all the same, and we loved it.
The story's so good. It doesn't. I mean, that's how good the story is. It's so good it doesn't matter. I take those old TVB ones as if I'm watching a school play. And I'm okay with that, because it's great. So, but well, as we wind down again, we pre-recorded this because of the time difference. But when this airs, which should be Monday, there's several days left in the campaign. We highly encourage you to check it out. I've already backed it. Brian's backed it. Patrick's about to back it.
Actually, correction, I just backed it. So breaking news.
Nice.
Thank you, sir.
Record breaker.
Yeah. So the record is officially broken. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
Thanks,
It's number 38.
Excellent. Great. So it's official. So please check it out. Please support. And the one thing that I always want to remind people is there's different ways to support. That's what's great about Kickstarter. So if you're wanting to go ahead and get the digital copy, if that's more within your means, feel free to do so. If you can get the physical copy, all the better. Okay. Keep in mind, it's not a 22-page floppy. This is a very big book. So that's huge. And the other thing is, even if you can't back it at this time, you can always support by following them on their social media, and also you can just share it. I often tell people it literally takes like 3 clicks of your index finger or taps of your finger to support a campaign. So even if this may not be the best time, we totally understand. But please share it because it's within the genre. It's about all the stuff that we love here on the show. So please do check it out. Is there anything else anybody would like to add as we close out?
KJ,
how can people find you online?
Yes,
like that.
Yeah, please.
KJ, please give us the call to action.
Yes, go for it, KJ.
Yep. By the time this video shows on YouTube, I think we will have about maybe 4 to 5 days left, which is not a lot of time. It's not a lot of time, and we have a lot of stretch goals waiting for you all to unlock. We have art prints, we have sign books, and so on. Yep, basically many of it. So head over to the Kickstarter campaign and back us. Not only that, you won't just receive the physical copy of the book if you back the physical level. You also receive sketch card. So I have this already printed, so
great.
I'm able to show you guys.
Nice.
The Zhao Ming.
Oh, it even has the looks great. Look at that.
And this is the back of it. Yeah, so you'll be able to receive this as well during the Kickstarter campaign.
Wow. Very nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yep. And then, of course, if you really miss the campaign, let's say you watch this 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, perhaps you will have volume 2 already. But you can always follow us on our socials. So mine is at Chiral Comics, CHIRAL Comics. And then Api is at That Chinese History Guy, if I'm not wrong.
Just look for That Chinese History Guy on YouTube, man, or you can just search my name on YouTube. I would even come up if you search my name. because that's my channel name as well.
Excellent. And just a reminder, the book is we were saying 99.9% done. It's just getting people in that Hall of Fame. So you pretty much rest assured you're going to get this book. The work's been done. It's good to go. So that's it. That's a huge draw.
It's going to look so good on the bookshelf too.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so great. And Brian, do you have any parting words, or where people can follow you online?
On Instagram, it's at wuxiaman. Twitter, it's _wuxiaman. I'm pretty active on social media. I do my best to respond as fast as possible. And I just want to say thank you to our two guests for joining us on this. Despite the big time zone difference and live in different countries, I feel that's so great when we meet kindred spirits who share the same passion, same cause. Because for me, growing up, especially growing up in the United States, I did not, even though I grew up watching a lot of wuxia TV dramas and movies, I could not relate to a lot of people. A lot of my classmates, even if they have similar faces as me, they were watching, oppa or whatever. But for me, I was like, no, I'm going to continue consuming my favorite genre, and I'm glad I did, because I got to meet people like, well, I actually haven't met Patrick in person yet, but I've met Patrick online. I've met Kurtis Fujita, and I virtually met you too. So I'm really glad you two came, and just so happy to see what comes after this.
Excellent. And for myself, there's two places where you can find me online as far as websites. There's my Kung Fu school. I teach online, so it's tigercrane.net. And so we have different programs. We have live classes via Zoom, and we have recorded classes. So wherever you are in the world, you can learn some Kung Fu. Also, Brian and I work together on Fifth Ring Studios on the Shadow Ghost comic. So you can check out the shadowghost.com. Make sure you put the in front. We have our first issue up there for sale, as long as different merch. And you can also find the Shadow Ghost brand all over social media. Just look up Shadow Ghost comic and it'll come up. And Patrick, how about yourself? Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me online at Plugo or Plugo Arts, where I update my artist website with comics and blog posts and all sorts of interesting things. The real treat there is the exclusive newsletter that I just released, which comes with exclusive comics and a whole back catalog of other interesting things. And then my most recent graphic novel, as you know, Curtis, is A Tiger's Tale, which Volume 1 came out for Year of the Tiger. Volume 2 is currently in the works and looks really good. I added a bunch of new pages. I've been redoing some artwork because I want it to be the best it possibly could be. But the one thing I want to remind folks that this is just part one of a week of the Comics Foo Show. So make sure to tune in tomorrow, where we have a live stream with some special guests. So 8 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, Tuesday, October 17th, tune in live, where we are joined by the legendary author James Robinson and the amazing illustrator who's been on the show before, Jeff Johnson, who are launching their new comic, Rogue's Kingdom, which is an honorary entry to the Wuxia library because they have swords and those guys are hella cool. So we're gonna just, we're just gonna say that it's part of Wuxia Week this week. So I just want to make sure that we have that said. And I really want to thank you two guys for joining us. And I am promising you now that I'm looking for a reason to invite you back. We're going to have to talk more history, and we're going to have to talk more art, So let's get our brains thinking of how else we can make this happen again in the future.
Just let me know, man. We'll always be glad to be back. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you both so much. And again, everybody, make sure to check out Zhao on Kickstarter. A couple more days in the campaign. Please back it. Please support it. So,
yes, right. Remember, support is as simple as a share. So get the word out there.
Yes, definitely. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.